In the spring of 2000, the Irish novelist Colm Toibin began a 14-year mission to write an intimate account of a painful event in his childhood.
The business of dragging things up for yourself and trying to get them down right on the page, it's not a form of pleasure. It's really about finding for the first time just how much of this grief was there and untreated and untouched.
The facts of Colm's life are so inescapably strong that he has to return to those places and repeat and reinvestigate. And he does it with enormous personal courage.
The rhythm of it and the stillness of it, I think you never ever doubt that the depth of sadness that's behind it.
But there is another side to Colm Toibin.
How are you? Look at you.
He's a wild spirit. There's an exuberance and spontaneity which belies the studied melancholy of his writer's life. And his boldness has allowed him to take on subjects that others shy away from. His audacious portrayal of the Virgin Mary as an angry, bereaved mother has shocked audiences around the world.
It opened famously to the noise of people's objection. They were very angry, so they brought children and drums to disrupt what they felt was a sacrilegious play.
And now Toibin publishes his latest work that deals directly with his own bereavement, the death of his father and his mother's bewildering silence, the trigger that unleashed an urgent need to write.
It's got holes in it, doesn't it?
Colm!
Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry, come in. Excuse me.
None of these bells...
Really?
Have you noticed that you have two bells here?
Shall we?
Here.
Oh, yeah, no, they don't work,
Why are
no.
they there, then?
This used to work.
Oh, really?
But this...
That used to work about 100 years ago.
Does this not work?
No.
Oh, that's great, isn't it?
Yes, it's great.
No, just no. Come in.
Can we come in?
Come in.
Should we go upstairs? Can we go upstairs?
Yeah,
I want to see
Upstairs.
the infamous chair.
The chair. You know...
This affable figure, who invites me into his shambolic writer's cave, has homes here in Ireland, in Spain and the States. His life is all over the place, but there's nothing chaotic about his prose. He works with the discipline of a monk.
Do you have one of these chairs, like, that has wheels on it?
Yes, I have one of those wheelie
Which
chairs.
fits the contours of your back?
Well, it's supposed to.
Yeah, no, that's very bad for you, because it means that when you really need to concentrate, instead you're just too comfortable.
Is this the one?
Well, there are a few of them. I mean, they're all like this. Yeah, there are a set of them. For working on, they're absolutely marvelous. Because they really stiffen your resolve. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're thinking of writing a bad sentence, this would really prevent you from doing that. There we go. End of slide.
Gosh, you're a harsh man.
Now. Okay, well, here we go.
You talk, Colm, about the deep need to write. I just want to know, where does that come from?
Oh, I can remember precisely, you know, a time when I went back to school after my father died, and that would be in September 1967, when I was 12. Every evening almost something would come to me. You know, an image, a sentence, an idea. And it obviously satisfied something very deep. It allowed certain things to emerge, but not clearly. It wasn't as though I was writing autobiography or a diary, or I was involved in any way in obvious self-exploration. But I wonder if it isn't true with a lot of writers, that something occurs in your life early enough to give you the need to set things down, even if the things are distant metaphors for what you're actually feeling. rather than sort of direct diary entries.
I mean, it's pretty amazing to me that from the age of 12, you were sort of writing every single day.
Yeah, that's right.
Almost 50 years later, Toibin has built a formidable reputation. He's written 8 novels, poems and short stories. He's been a journalist, an art critic. He's written plays, even an opera. He has professorships in the States.
And this is my friend Inigo Thomas, who used to live in New York.
He's won plenty of awards. And then there's the Booker Prize, the one that makes you a household name. Toibin has been shortlisted no less than 3 times. It was a really big deal, wasn't it? Particularly that first time.
People stopped their cars, and people started to beep the horn. I thought there was something wrong. Then a man stopped his car, and a man who looked like his son got out of the car and went, "Yeah!" And of course, it was for Ireland. It was as though you were actually like an athlete, and you'd written a book for Ireland. And it hadn't occurred to me. And of course, then it meant you had to go and lose for Ireland, on the night. And you've washed yourself, you've got a monkey suit on, you're trying to be, and people think you're wonderful, and then you don't win. And the funny thing, the first thing that occurs when you don't win is the TV lights on you are turned off. And that has an extraordinary effect on you, as though somehow or other you're just in 2 dimensions now, or the colour has been taken, the blood has been removed. And so you then discover that they really do want you to go, to leave, and that the people who know you really wished you wouldn't approach them. But also, I think losing anything, if you're a writer, is very good for you in that it just brings you back to, not only to yourself, but to being able to imagine losing, and then being able to deal with your characters, mornings, hangovers, bad days, disappointments, and indeed grief.
Do you think that's true of life anyway, that essentially that failure or disappointment of that kind can actually be fuel for something else?
Well, I've never known happiness to help a prose style or the structuring of a novel or the general weather of a novel. I've never known glee or ease in the world to be the thing that makes all the difference.
In the wake of that first Booker bruising 15 years ago, Toibin started writing the novel that would deal directly with the disappointment that marked his own childhood. The novel looks back to when 8-year-old Donal and his younger brother were sent away by their mother to stay with an aunt, while their father was dying. It felt like a lifetime. Nora Webster is told from the point of view of his mother, now widowed, and trying to make sense of the damage her absence has caused.
Yeah, that's a nice picture.
That's a beautiful picture.
Is there a date at the back of it? Oh, look, taken in August 1940.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And here she is with your father.
Yeah, there they are again. And that would be in Ballyconnery.
How was your mother with you?
She was, I suppose, there were 5 children, so, and it's a small house. And in the novels, I have given an awful lot of the characters, I made them only children, as a way of just sort of trying to, concentrate the parents' attention on one. And that's my father.
That's your father.
Sometime in the early 40s, I suppose.
He looks quite intimidating in this picture.
Oh, does he? Well, he was a teacher, I suppose. It was his job to look intimidating, yeah.
Now this, of course, I recognise. What a great
picture. Yeah, that has to be sometime in the 60s, early 60s.
Colm comes from a long line of loyal Republicans. His grandfather belonged to the Fenian Brotherhood, a forerunner of the IRA, and his father, Michael, was a prominent member of the ruling Fianna Fáil party.
And there's your father sitting right next to De Valera.
Exactly, right next to De Valera.
The Ireland that we dreamed of would be the
He worked closely alongside Eamon de Valera, the leader and long-time campaigner for Ireland's independence.
of a people who, satisfied with frugal comfort,
The Toibins lived in a modest house in Enniscorthy, County Wexford, in the shadow of the infamous Vinegar Hill, the scene of 2 of Ireland's most significant and bloody battles against the British. It's also where Colm's father led the campaign to turn the 13th century castle into a place to commemorate the Republican cause.
To the side, actually, where they wanted to live was the old castle, the old citadel in the town.
And this here is the plaque to my father, who was involved then in the restoration. So this is the dungeon down here, which I have to say, when I was about 6 years old, was the most exciting thing I could think of, because the idea that you could be held, and people were held here as prisoners. So you're talking about a castle not built, for ceremonial purposes, but built to actually, incarcerate people, and that, So what was your father like? He was dark, but he didn't look like me at all. Did you spend a lot of time with him? I told her how he used to pick me up and put me on his back and hold my feet in his hands as though his hands were pedals. I don't know why I told her that. It was the best thing, the happiest memory I had of him. I told her that I loved it when he gave me his full attention.
As in his novel, Nora Webster, one day, without warning, the 8-year-old Colm and his younger brother were taken from the house and sent away to live with an aunt. Their father had been taken ill, but no one really told them. They would neither hear from nor see their mother for months.
Childhood experience is strange. It leaves its funny marks, and perhaps then, I'm talking about 1963, adults didn't really know as much as they would learn later about children's ability to notice and need and watch and remember and scar.
That moment when you were 8 years old and your father became ill and your mother abandoned you and your brother, that clearly seems to me to have been a moment, that wound, if you like, was one that recurs and is in this book.
Yeah, I mean, abandoning is a very strong word. I mean, abandoning suggests left on the street. But I mean, in that time of family crisis, no one knew what to do with these two boys. So they just thought, well, if we leave them with an aunt, they'll be safe and they'll be looked after, without knowing what that might be like from our side, which was that we didn't know whether we were ever going home again, or when, or what was happening. And I think it certainly marked me. Nora sat on the sofa and Josie on the armchair beside her. Donald came home with this terrible stammer. Yes, he got that here, Nora, it began here. I don't know what you were thinking of, leaving them here all that time and never once coming to see them. Morris was dying. Connor wet the bed most nights. I don't know what you were thinking of, leaving them here all that time, Josie repeated. I had no choice. There we are, then. Did you think they would come home unchanged? I don't know what I thought. I wanted to come and ask you. Well, you've asked me, Nora. I was trying to imagine someone who ostensibly is a person of goodwill, who has really got no evil in her. But nonetheless, at certain moments, a thoughtlessness emerges and under pressure becomes something quite dark.
And like Donal in the book, I mean, your stammer emerged around the same time, didn't it?
Yeah, that's the first time I've written about that. It's a funny business. I know that I didn't have a problem when I was 7, but there was a problem the following year. And the problem is on hard consonant sounds. And unfortunately, my own name has, I mean my first name, my second name, they have them. So if somebody in those years asked me, what's your name? Like, if you ask me, like...
Say it now, then.
No, I can't. I mean, I could do it for you as, with breath. I could, say, because I would concentrate. But if I didn't think for a second, and I wonder if writing actually isn't a release from that problem, where, you can write any word, where his speech became really difficult.
The family did come back to live at home together, but their father was never well again, and their mother stayed emotionally distant. Michael Toibin lived just 4 more years.
My eyes filled up with tears as I spoke about him. How much I missed him after he died, and how I could never speak about him to my mother. As though he were a guilty secret between us, as if his death were a crime, something best forgotten, a terrible darkness which neither of us could face.
Did you have any sense, did you feel you might lose him?
No, that never was on anyone's mind. It was never not mentioned. So that came as an enormous surprise, and I was shocked, yeah. No, that was not there.
So when it happened, when he did actually die, was there any preparation for that? Did
None.
it? So completely out of the blue, really, as far as you were concerned.
From my point of view.
And that sort of, that grief that you felt, which it recurs in different places and different books, is that something that has sort of just informed your writing and your approach to life and to death since that moment?
I think it's, you see, you don't feel anything, or what you feel you internalize so successfully, that it's that idea of silence, of not feeling, of blocking feeling, of stopping feeling, of doing anything not to feel. And I suppose if you're writing a novel, all those things again then can be used and dramatized and put against each other, or almost as though they can be sort of matched and mismatched to see what you can do with that.
You know, bereavement is a wonderful, problem for a writer, particularly a writer like Colm, who is interested in the shape of things. I think all writers are interested in the shape of things, and that their resolutions are also aesthetic. And so I think that the bereavement, the young boy, who, it's just so sad. And if you look at how drained of psychology much of the work is, you think, well, where's it all gone? Who took the plug out emotionally, and where has it all gone? And you think, well, perhaps it is that stunned after moment of grief. That's where it's all gone. That's, somebody's pressed the mute button, right? That's where it's all gone. It is close to real life. It's not a fantastical sort of adventure trip. It is going back and looking at it again and again and again.
In his books, Toibin takes an almost sadistic delight in uprooting his characters and watching them bottle up the big emotions. He did it brilliantly with his novel, Brooklyn, when he exiled his young heroine to America, and in doing so, tapped into the emotional baggage of generations of Irish men and women. Ireland in the hard-up 1950s saw the greatest exodus since the famines a century earlier, with up to 50,000 people a year crossing the Atlantic. And the town his heroine outgrows is his hometown, Enniscorthy.
Look at this here. I mean, what do you think this is? This here?
Looks like a very prosperous shop.
It's not. It's actually a film set.
It's a film set?
Yeah, it was used as the woman. It's called Nettles Kelly in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn is being made into a film, shot partly in Enniscorthy. It follows the fortunes of Eilish Lacey, whose sister and mother decide that her best hope of a good life lies without them in America. Homesick and unmoored, the separation threatens to overwhelm her.
She lay on the bed with the letters beside her. For the past few weeks, she realized she had not really thought of home. And she had thought, of course, of her mother and Rose. But her own life in Enniscorthy, the life she had lost and would not have again, she'd kept out of her mind. All this came to her like a terrible weight, and she felt for a second that she was going to cry. It was as though an ache in her chest was trying to force tears down her cheeks despite her enormous effort to keep them back. She did not give in to whatever it was.
It's being adapted for the screen by the novelist Nick Hornby.
Brooklyn has a beautiful simplicity to it. I think it's very emotional. People are very affected by it. And actually, even though it's an intensely literary novel, what Colm does so beautifully is put us there, and you feel right from the first lines that you're in the hands of somebody who has been able to distill pain into very simple sentences, and I'm sure that's what so many people respond to in Colm's writing, because it's not complicated, but the rhythm of it and the stillness of it, I think you never ever doubt the depth of sadness that's behind it.
She was nobody here. It was not just that she had no friends and family. It was rather that she was a ghost in this room, in the streets on the way to work. Nothing here was part of her. It was false, empty, she thought. She closed her eyes and tried to think, as she had done so many times in her life, of something she was looking forward to. But there was nothing, not the slightest thing, not even Sunday, nothing maybe except sleep. And she was not even certain she was looking forward to sleep. In any case, she could not sleep yet, since it was not yet 9 o'clock. There was nothing she could do. It was as though she had been locked away.
I think you can, in the book, completely feel how agonising it must be to be so far away. And that's something, of course, that a contemporary audience has to remember, which is that it's a long, long boat journey away from home. It's a very painful dilemma, and I think it's a dilemma that presumably literally millions of people have felt.
What actually brings her home is the sudden death of her sister.
And that sequence of days when Eilish hears about the death of Rose, being deprived of someone's death, I found that very, very powerful.
There are times when I'm working when I realise that something is coming now. I mean, something that literally happened to me. And certainly that episode in Brooklyn, when she's far away from home and discovers that her sister has died, how she's told, what she does, what she feels, what happens over the days. I think that could not have been written if it had not happened to me. That my brother died, and died suddenly, and it was certainly something I was never going to write about directly. And then it came, and then it came. The funeral will be the day after tomorrow, he said. It was the softness in his voice, the guarded way he avoided her eyes, that made her start to cry. And when he produced a large and clean white handkerchief that he had clearly had in his pocket prepared for this, she became almost hysterical as she pushed him away. Why did I ever come here, she asked. But she knew that he could not understand her because she was sobbing so much. She took the handkerchief from him and blew her nose. Why did I ever come here?
The news of Rose's death brings Eilish home to Enniscorthy, but will she stay?
I'm booked to go back to New York on the 21st.
Oh, you can wait an extra week to see your best friend married.
I didn't want her to stay in Ireland. I think I come at it as a suburban boy who was desperate to get out of his sleepy dormitory town. I think actually a lot of art is made by people who want to get out of small towns.
Just like Colm.
Just like Colm, it's a great driving force, I think, that desire to get out of somewhere.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Did I see you taking photographs?
Oh, you did indeed,
Yeah.
yes.
No.
Brooklyn happened to so many families over the years in Ireland. Nearly everyone has lost an Irish Lacey.
So your mother was called
May Lacey.
May Lacey, and her sister was Eilish Lacey,
Yes.
and they went to Brooklyn.
May did.
What years would they have gone?
In the 50s.
Yeah, exactly when my Eilish Lacey went.
That's uncanny, really.
What? Yeah, but it's not that uncanny actually, in that that was a syndrome. That's what happened. You know, that's where girls went. I mean, what else would you do? Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? I'm good.
How much has all this to do with being an Irish writer? I ask you this as well. We know the few recurring themes that come in Colm's work: home, exile, grief. They are familiar themes somehow, and Irish writers seem to engage with those. You do as well, motherhood.
Yeah, I love the way people offload their own themes onto Ireland and say, oh, Irish people have families. We don't have families, but Irish people have families. You know, it's like their drinking problem. Let's go to Ireland and get drunk. Let's read an Irish book and have a family. Because we all come from families. We don't come from anywhere else. We all come from mothers. There's no other way into the world. And the fact that Irish writers address this or are asked to address it by the wider audience is both interesting and tedious at the same time. Get your own mothers. Get your own goddamn families. Write about them.
So this, I mean, for anyone, including me, was the first and intense connection to beauty. When I was growing up, and I was an altar boy here, the church would be packed. You would ring a bell at 20 to the hour, and you would go across there and right up into the steeple, into the belfry. And like something from medieval Europe, you would, aged 8 or 9, you would get the rope and pull. You get no sound and no sound and no sound. And then eventually it would begin. And it must have driven people nuts at mid 20 to 7 on a Sunday morning who were trying to sleep, you know, a hangover off or something. And obviously, this was a place ritually for not only confession, but for weddings, for funerals, and for baptism. You know, it's where the entire run of your life would happen from beginning to end here.
Is this also where you heard music for the first time? Really?
Yeah, I mean, there was an absolutely marvelous choir, and the organ is really very good, and the particularly beautiful, the Ave Verum, Mozart's Ave Verum. I have an absolute clear memory of hearing the Ave Verum with the different voices coming in at different times from the choir, made up of local people, trained by Paddy Murphy. I think it's very difficult to remove yourself from it if you've been brought up with the rituals. And the rituals are very pure and beautiful. And they affected me very deeply, I think. The actual set of beliefs themselves. So I've been able to use that in books, but I am a lapsed Catholic. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense to me as a set of, as for example, dogma. And it has been very damaging as a sort of public thing in Ireland, and elsewhere indeed. But the private thing, the business of the repetition of prayer, the business of another world, a non-material world, a spiritual place, which one can inhabit in this world as much as in the next. I mean, all of that's absolutely fascinating and remains so for me. So, I mean, I'm fascinated by religious feeling. Yeah, this is where we came every summer, to this house. And there was a thatch roof on it, but actually the inside is more or less still the same. I mean, a lot of families from Enniscorthy, even though Enniscorthy is only about 10 or 12 miles away, would come for a month or for 2 months, for as long as they could, take little houses, rent them. And so a small community of people grew up over the summers here. That was my parents' bedroom in there. I started to write about it. I put it into my first novel almost by accident. I just needed a place. And when it came up in that novel, The South, when I found I was writing about this sea and the grey sky and often the good day, good weather. But this somehow was something I almost needed to write about. And then I wrote another novel which was set here. And then I wrote another novel which was set here. Yeah, that was our bedroom there, our bedroom window there. Yeah. I mean, it's odd because after my father died, we didn't come back. Yeah. There's a turn you can take on the road, and we never made that turn left again. And we just didn't do that. We went to other places along the coast, but never here again. So it was sort of locked in a sort of memory for me. Okay, here we are. How are we doing, mister?
I was going to ask you whether this crisis in your life of your father's illness and then his death in this sort of shocking way, did you know why it was you were feeling bad at the time, or is it something that took you a long time to understand?
It was sometime in the 1980s, so I'm talking like 20 years later, when someone I'd been working with as a journalist, and her husband was a psychiatrist, and I'd often thought he was sitting beside me and he would look at me. He would say, "Are you all right?" And I'd say, yeah, what do you mean? He said, and he would start asking me really, and I would want him to stop this so I could go back to joining in the banter I had some opinion on some larger subject than myself. And one night he said to me, "You have to do something about this. Do you know that?" I said, "Well," I immediately wanted to just stop, leave me alone. I'm not here to be treated by you. And he wouldn't stop. He persisted in it. And I knew no one who went to a shrink. So that sort of, idea of having to talk about yourself to someone and paying someone not to speak, while you talked once a week in Ireland just didn't, it just never caught on really, And he said that he was doing these workshop sessions which lasted an entire weekend. He did in the end more or less entrap me, in a very sweet way, to say, "Look, you are here, you've nothing else to do, do come." I took off my shoes and loosened my clothes and lay down on the mattress. There was soothing music in the background and perhaps a drum sound. He spoke slowly and told us to breathe as though our breath was liquid. I did what he said. He then told us to begin to breathe faster as though our life depended on it. I don't know if some of the crying and moaning sounds came from the PA system or from the people around me, but I think from both. I was in terrible distress. I had entered another world which was more urgent and real than the one I had left. I had to breathe hard, breathe like hell to stay there. It was heavy drum sounds and wild music and cries, babies crying, someone moaning in pain. And I was moaning too and screaming. I was in my parents' bedroom on the morning that my father died. My mother was downstairs. It is difficult to know how time passed or how long things went on for. I know that I screamed, "I cannot deal with this," over and over. I know that I screamed at the top of my voice. I know that what was happening was real and the distress was absolute.
It must have been overwhelming. You were crying. You were.
Yes. That the theory of this is that you, in a time of traumatic experience, and that includes the experience of grief, of loss, that you do not have the experience, that you withhold it, that you put a stone in the stream of it, so that it cannot go ahead because it's too much for you. And that then the water, to continue the metaphor, the water on the other side of the stone begins to muddy and almost poison you. And the job of this is not merely to remember the experience or expel the experience, but to have the experience. I started to shout, "Will you put your arms around me?" I was a 12-year-old boy in the front upstairs bedroom of a small house, with neighbors and friends visiting downstairs, expressing their condolences in quiet voices, with my aunt having told me that my father had died during the night in a hospital not far from the town. I was crying all the time now and shouting out to my father and my mother, "Will you put your arms around me? Will you please, please?"
And you'd been clearly someone, he sensed there was some trauma unresolved.
He could see it in my body language and in some way or other that I responded to personal questions. Yes, he could. Sometimes the crying sounded terrible, like howling, but I couldn't stop. Or at least I did not know whether I could or not, because I did not try. I seemed to want this to happen.
In September of 1975, the day after his university finals, a 20-year-old Toibin fled Ireland and flew to Spain.
Hey!
Barcelona.
How are you?
Barcelona. I did not know what to expect. The sense of pleasure which I caught from the sound of the words. Maybe it was the sounds which exerted themselves and held me.
Despite his love for Ireland, Colm, like so many others, felt an urgent need to get away. He arrived in Spain in the autumn that Franco died and found a city riding high on post-dictatorship adrenaline. And for Colm too, there was an immediate sense of liberation.
Had it ever occurred to me, she asked, that he was homosexual? I'd never heard her say the word before, and she pronounced it as though she'd recently learned it. She looked at me sharply. I looked straight into the glass of the window, and I saw her shape in the armchair. "No," I said to the glass, "no, it had not occurred to me." "Well, I think he is," she said, "and I think it is something you should consider before you become too friendly with him. Jorge is not homosexual." I mimicked her accent as I spoke. "I am the one who is homosexual, and I always have been." She did not flinch. She held my gaze. I stood still. She wanted to know if there was anything she could have done, if there was anything we could do now. I said, no, it was always there, and it would not go away. "And when did it start?" she asked.
When did you first realize that you were gay?
Oh, it's funny the way in which you can be on almost two routes at the same time, one where it's absolutely clear, and the other where it hasn't occurred to you at all. And I went through quite a number of years in that funny position, which I think is not unusual, where all my desires were focused on men, my sexual desires, and where I didn't understand the implications of that for my life.
You resisted writing gay fiction for a very long time, and then you let rip. Do you enjoy writing about sex?
I mean, the great battle won was a battle over being explicit in a novel about sex. But of course, the beginning was heterosexuality. I think every gay person had this experience of reading your own life in a novel and seeing, my God, I didn't know that you could. Other people were doing exactly, the desires and that this is being made known publicly. And so I think being able to write sort of filthy gay sex scenes, yes, there is a sort of mischief involved. And yes, maybe even pleasure when it's done. I mean, not while you're doing, because while you're doing, you have to concentrate on the commas. You know, it's not, I mean, you're writing about freedom, but there's no freedom if you're writing, because you have to, is there a semicolon needed here? But yes, there is a sort of idea that this freedom is an important one, and that it will matter to the reader, and matters politically.
Toibin came out late in his writing. He was well into his 30s before he broached his own sexuality, and did so quite gingerly in his column for the Irish Sunday Independent in 1989. Homosexuality was not decriminalised in Ireland until 4 years later.
When did you actually reveal to your mother that you were gay?
Oh, we never talked about it.
Really?
No. I got someone else to tell her, and she asked a very beautiful question. I mean, instead of saying all the things that are said in the story of the night, or she just said, is he happy? And the person who was so flabbergasted in a way, because it's such a hard question to answer, came back to me to say, your mother wants to know if you're happy. So I said, oh yeah, tell her I'm just fine.
And that was it?
Yeah, it never came up then in conversation. I mean, it wasn't something we talked about, ever.
Between the ages of 15 to 17, Colm attended a boarding school run by Catholic priests close to Enniscorthy. The school found itself embroiled in a scandal which would not come to light for many years.
Let me now just go, because it's such a fascinating and sort of extraordinary circumstance, and you've addressed this in fiction, but in reality, about your time at the old school at St. Peter's and this extraordinary collision that your life has, and your awareness and your sexuality, everything, with actually circumstances which later on proved to be toxic and dangerous and terrible.
St. Peter's had a seminary attached, so that a lot of people who were studying for the priesthood were over there. The whole idea of the priesthood was quite close, and a lot of our teachers were priests. And the atmosphere was really liberal, so that you would have big debates about contraception, abortion, divorce. All those things were openly and regularly discussed, but homosexuality was not discussed. It was really not mentioned. And one of the problems about the school never mentioning homosexuality was that when you're 16 or 17 and you're homosexual, it's very easy to mistake your homosexuality and think it's a vocation for the priesthood. And that can hit a space within the self, which is spiritual. And you can begin to be moved by spiritual things. Also, it solves the problem of the closet, which is, of course, if you become a priest, no one expects you to have a sexuality in any case. And so all the idea that you're somebody who might have a life that you can't work out disappears, dissolves, and the priesthood becomes a way through. So that the first thing you have to say to somebody is, are you sure that it's not merely that you're homosexual?
Outside Dublin, at a time of unprecedented concern about the church and child abuse, a seemingly endless succession of brothers and priests have appeared in court in Ireland in recent weeks to answer charges of abuse, generating...
There was one priest in particular who I really liked, and was a very, very good teacher. And I have a particular memory of a day where I pretended to be sick. And it was lovely, because you'd go to the library or not go to class. But I ended up just going up to this one priest's room, and I have a memory of him, this priest, and another theologian, just talking to another in the morning. We had coffee, the three of us, and talking about various things. I mean, from gossip to serious things about theology. And with the idea that in the future, these two men's names would be bywords, would be in the newspapers. One of them would go to jail and the other would have to leave the country. And, you know, in cases that I'm thinking about particularly, they hit on teenage boys. I mean, not on 5-year-olds. I mean, I'm not talking about pederasty. I'm not talking about pedophilia. I'm asking the question, really. If you put a heterosexual man whose heterosexuality could not be mentioned in charge of a school of girls aged between 12 and 18 for 40 years, are you absolutely sure? Can you say definitely that something would not occur in one of those years where one girl would become an extraordinary object of desire, however illegal, however wrong, however damaging? And I suppose that was an issue that preoccupied me, and I wrote about it. And I was going to write about it directly. I mean, from the point of view of the society or the victim. But then I realized that part of the story that's not being told is the blurred person in the picture is the family of the actual perpetrator.
Well, the Greenwood. Come in.
What it would be like to be a relative, a close relative, a mother, or a sister of someone who'd been accused in this way.
You must think it's strange me coming back like this. Molly, Frank.
Is there something wrong with Frank?
Molly, there's going to be a court case. It's bad.
In the parish?
It was when he was teaching.
Does anyone else know this?
I think in fiction, you've always got to be very careful not to become a journalist. That if something is in the newspapers and it's clear to everybody, then it's of no use to you. And if you find yourself taking sides and everyone else has taken that side as well, then you're exploring territory that's already known and there's nothing in it for you or the reader in a way. But if you move around to a different perspective, then you can get something because it's a story that's not being told and that in a way can't be told because it's happening in the private realm.
Did you tell the boys?
Yeah, well, I had to because... And so did Margaret, actually, because we were scared that they'd hear about it at school.
The phrase comes from a definition of Irish respectability from the late 19th century. The three things you wanted to have were a bull in the field, a well in the yard, and a priest in the family. And, of course, ironically, 100 years later, a priest in the family came to mean something else. You know, the issue always is, of course, there, but for the grace of God. I mean, in other words, I went to Barcelona, but if I'd had one different thought at a certain, or one even mentor at a certain age, at 17, I could have easily entered the priesthood.
So that's an extraordinary thing to say. I was going to ask you that, of course. Did it ever?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. One of the Easter holidays in this school, I didn't go home. And a difficult thing to explain to home, you know, I might have a vocation and I'm going to explore that in the school. And that, I mean, even though we were Catholics, it wasn't something that was viewed as a great thing. You know, it wasn't as though it was that sort of religious household where all they wanted was to have a priest in the family. It wouldn't have been like that.
It seems to have become something of a trademark for Toibin to put himself in the mother's shoes in a difficult mother-son relationship. He did it again recently with his most daring and explosive material yet. In 2011, rattling the Catholic Church even further, Colm imagined what Christ's crucifixion would have been like for the most famous of all mothers, Jesus' mother, Mary. The Testament of Mary is a raw, humanized portrait of a woman struggling to understand What was the point of her child's death?
He was the boy I had given birth to, and he was more defenseless now than he'd ever been then. And in those days after he was born, when I held him and watched him, my thoughts included the thought that I would have someone now to watch over me when I was dying, to look after my body when I had died. In those days, if I'd ever dreamed that I would see him bloody, and the crowd around filled with zeal that he should be bloodied more, I would have cried out as I cried out that day.
The novel put Toibin back on the Booker shortlist, but his stage version has provoked strong feelings. Tony nominations have come alongside Hate Mail and Fury. It was performed on Broadway and then in London with the actor Fiona Shaw.
So, Fiona, the Virgin Mary somehow has seemed to sort of be, to accept, you know, the myth, the experience, the sacrifice, but this is not what this story tells us.
Well, like Colm, I was brought up in Ireland where there was a sort of a rosary, it was called, of statues of the Virgin Mary, all painted in this terrible thing called Marian blue, which is a colour that gives you the chills. It has no feeling, no sexuality, no intelligence. The church over the 2,000 years had ironed her out into absolutely blancmange, blue blancmange. And so I knew the world that he was reacting to very, very well. It's a fantastic story of a woman who has a son who becomes incredibly famous for doing something she doesn't quite understand. He began to cure people, or claimed to cure people, or his followers claimed he cured people.
Mixing with the wrong crowd.
He was mixing with what she calls misfits. She says that they were all misfits, and she in the play, the premise of the play is that she's talking to two of the evangelists who are writing up this story. So they're pushing her to tell their version of the story.
To endorse the myth, really.
To endorse the myth that they are creating after his death. And she just wants to tell her story. And it's not necessarily fitting what they want, which is that they began to believe or create a man who had to be called the Son of God. She's mortified by this because she feels he's the son of her husband and herself.
I gasped when I saw the cross.
She tries to go to the marriage feast at Cana, and when she sees this man cross a room, as though, you know, she says he was wearing clothes as though wearing very rich clothes as though they belonged to him by right, and he barely looks at her, you know, and he just says. She embraces him and he says, "Woman, what have I to do with you?" And she says, "I am your mother." The fact that his cruel death is elevated to something is not what she feels. She just feels the loss of this beautiful boy who had become, as he grew up, slightly distant, slightly arrogant. And of course, all these things are slightly sacrilegious.
The way they do, of course.
The way they do.
What he's done is he's taken this icon and he's given her a voice, turned her into a mother.
Yes, I mean, many mothers who came to the show who have no tragic relationship to their son came often weeping to the dressing room because they did recognize this peeling away of the adolescent son from the mother as being their own experience, and a sort of silent tragedy that happens every mother as the son leaves.
There must be several hundred people here.
The show, when it was performed on Broadway, got tremendous reception critically, and yet there was this infamous protest, or this famous protest, however you like to look at it. Tell me about what that was like and why that happened, do you think?
Well, it was very upsetting because, you know, one does want the theatre to provoke, but when we were opening in New York, a group of people led by some priests who, of course, had not seen the show, came and they said, "How dare we, you know, sacrilegiously speak and diminish the Virgin Mary's belief." They brought children and drums to make a good racket outside the theatre. People spoke about Colm and I being a disgrace to our church and a disgrace to our nation. It is a play, it is not theology. It is not claiming this is the truth. Though brilliantly, Colm keeps saying in it, the Virgin Mary keeps saying, this is the truth. But on a stage, anything can be the truth.
Broadway clearly could not cope with this problematic play. The very same day that it was nominated for 3 Tony Awards, the production was pulled. But unfazed by the backlash in New York, Toibin is taking his play on tour through Catholic Spain, and it opens here in Barcelona.
I mean, that's an extraordinary photograph. I mean, she normally doesn't look like that, but she's obviously done something extraordinary with her face. Just look at the way her eyes are moving, sort of dark, sinister look. It's great, isn't it?
Mary is played by Blanca Portillo, the Spanish star best known from Almodóvar's film Volver.
¿Cómo va? Muy bien, muy bien, muy bien. ¿Cómo te tratan?
Me tratan muy bien.
¿Viene al piso y todo?
Sí.
¿No hay ruidos por la noche ni nada?
No, hay mucho silencio, está todo muy tranquilo. Sí.
¿Y los catalanes?
Los catalanes
son muy duros a veces.
In a bold move, the play is being staged in a 400-year-old convent in the heart of the city.
I suppose for the mothers in some of the books I've written, they don't tend to say what they're thinking. They withhold, they're restrained, they leave silence. They allow people to guess what they're feeling. Then in the Testament of Mary, this mother actually speaks her mind, suddenly breaking glass, and everything that must be said will be said, and nobody will be spared.
Cuando acabaron con un brazo hizo lo que pudo para que no pudieran extenderle el otro. Un hombre le sujetaba del hombro y el otro de la parte superior del brazo, pero aún así logró liberarse y tuvieron que pedir ayuda para dominarle. Cuando al fin lo inmovilizaron, clavaron el segundo clavo, dejando sus 2 brazos abiertos y extendidos sobre la cruz.
It was when they came to the last part that I stood up from the chair and moved away from them, assaulted by their words. He died to redeem the world, the other man said. His death has freed mankind from darkness and from sin. His Father sent him into the world that he might suffer on the cross. His Father. His Father. His suffering was necessary, he interrupted. It was how mankind would be saved. Saved. I was there, I said. I fled before it was over, but if you want witnesses, then I am one. I can tell you now, when you say that he redeemed the world, I will say it was not worth it. It was not worth it.
No valió la pena.
When Mary says it was not worth it, it's an extraordinary line, which you must have thought hard about. But what does it mean?
Oh, it means from her point of view, she was merely human. He was her son. The idea that he was anything else other than that. And I suppose I had in my head ideas of now, some contemporary resonances, that if your son was to be a suicide bomber, and everyone thought it was marvelous, and it was going to be an absolute, hero, with statues to him in the future. You'd say, well, could you do that to somebody else? For me, it's personal. For you, it's political. And the business of it coming from her body, almost, and from them it coming from some set of vague ideas that she'd never really listened to, that had been irritating to her in the first place. If you come to this play or read the book, I'm serious, I'm not messing with this. I'm not involved in mischievous blasphemy. I'm not involved in attempting to destroy an icon. that I'm actually exploring this to see where it will take me. And if it had come to me, an image of pure acceptance, pure grieving acceptance, I would have gone with that.
Mary's rage is not Colm's last word on mothers. His newest book, Nora Webster, draws in its quieter way upon the fierce chaos of a mother's grief. Though, of course, this time the mother is his own. Has he, I wonder, finally written his way towards some kind of peace with grief and the separation of mothers and sons?
In the process of writing, is this a way of you trying to understand what did happen at the time? Is this part of that process?
I don't think writing is a form of therapy or self-help, because it isn't really helpful. It isn't really good for you, because you're not only mulling over things, but you're actually solidifying them in a strange sort of way. So I don't think it helps you as a good, how would you put it, a sort of healthy human being to actually work churning material that belongs so closely to yourself over and over.
My final question is, what's hibernating in your brain at the moment?
Well, you know, my canvas is very small, and I realize that writers probably only have one subject. And it's a good thing to know, not to be afraid to say, oh, I'm going back to the old business of, you know, of mild grief, of the east coast of Ireland, you know, with waves that don't crash against rock, but sort of break gently, of a sort of gentle landscape, of mild manners, and of people who generally are more content in silence than they are in full disclosure.